The movie begins in 1937 when China is in the middle of the Second Sino-Japanese War. A group of soldiers who are mixed-bag farmers and shirkers of all ages are marching to the sanctuary city of Shanghai. Still, to reach the town, they first need to cross the countryside. When they finally reach their destination, Danchang, they first come across the destroyed and abandoned side of town. They don't see any National Revolution Army troops, military police, or even one Japanese soldier. As Xiao Hubei tells his uncle that his brother, Duanwu, is gone, the group discusses what to do next. Duanwu explores the area to see what's happening and discovers that there are Japanese soldiers. The Japanese soldiers riding their horses return to sites they previously destroyed to massacre the remaining refugees. They then see him in return, so they charge after him and find the rest of the Chinese troops. Duanwu immediately grabs his brother and his uncle so they can hide together and escape by sneaking around through the ruins of the building. At the same time, their group starts to run instead of fighting back, causing many of them to get killed. Later that night, they reach the more excellent, still inhabited part of Shanghai, only to find the NRA shooting fellow Chinese soldiers for being deserters. So, afraid of being labeled deserters, they also look for another group to join to cross safely. Eventually, they find a machine gun company they can enter and will take them to a warehouse where they're needed instead of executed. On October 26, the machine gun company joined the rest of Shanghai's troops to protect Sihang warehouse, the last stronghold between Shanghai and the Japanese. It's across the Suzhou River, owned by the Western nations, where the Japanese army can't get in. Their commander, Lei Xiong, reports to Lieutenant Colonel Xie Jinyuan that they have 7 wounded and found 16 deserters along the way. Meanwhile, Commander Zhu Shengzhong isn't happy to have deserters working with him and commands the squad center to execute them. But the colonel tells him they'll need all the help they can get, so he sends the new arrivals to work outside on the fortifications. Then, Duanwu talks to the colonel and tells him that he and his family aren't deserters. Instead, they're part of the Huangpi County headquarters troops that got left behind. While the group is working outside, Sergeant Jiang Jing receives a report that there's a situation in the north. They immediately sounded the alarm, and the soldiers formed defensive positions. When they saw the people approaching them, they were not Japanese soldiers but Chinese refugees heading for the international Shanghai settlement. Duanwu's uncle tells Duanwu to get Xiao Hubei and follow him as he sneaks out of the warehouse to join the refugees and try to enter the safety of the settlement. When he reaches the gates, he's not allowed to enter because he's wearing a military uniform. Even though he insists he's just a farmer, they don't allow him to join as soldiers aren't authorized to be there. Back in the warehouse, the soldiers enjoy the beautiful singing of a woman in a building across the river. At the same time, Hubei befriends the only other boy his age in the group, Xiao Kuai Yue. Meanwhile, a group of soldiers finds a hole in the wall hidden behind boxes and are surprised to find a stable with a white horse when they go through it. As soon as they open the stall door, the horse gets spooked and runs out, and they are about to shoot it when Kuai Yue whistles at the horse and calms it down. The next day, people in the streets are scared when they hear explosions and see that the Japanese have taken over yet another building and are waving their flags to show they have won. Thinking the warehouse is low in defense, the Japanese try to take it over. But they didn't know that the Chinese army was preparing a surprise by hiding to ambush them and managed to defeat them quickly. On the other hand, the soldiers still see Duanwu's group as deserters, so they're not allowed to fight. They wait in a locked room and are only let out when the battle ends. After they let them out, one of them gets shot as he tries to run away, attempting to desert them again. Duanwu then joins the soldiers in clearing and looting the bodies. However, there are still Japanese troops outside the warehouse, and they retaliate by throwing gas bombs through the windows. All soldiers run to find cover, grabbing towels to pee on them and cover their faces to protect themselves from the gas. The gas is now starting to leak out of the building, reaching the concession, causing civilians to panic and push each other trying to enter any building. Furthermore, the soldiers are starting to remove the gas at the warehouse when Duanwu accidentally gets pushed over and falls into an underground canal he didn't know existed. He explores a little and discovers an entrance they can easily use to sneak in and out of the warehouse. In the meantime, a Chinese journalist named Mr. Fong Xingwen goes to the Japanese army to sell them all the information he has about the warehouse troops. Japanese Colonel Konoe Isao likes what he hears and starts planning a new attack immediately. Back in the warehouse, the soldiers open the doors to take out dead bodies, allowing the horse to escape and run through the streets. The civilians see it and follow the animal's escape, taking it as a good sign. Meanwhile, the Japanese soldiers captured Chinese soldiers and are now displaying their bodies on poles as they demand the warehouse troops to surrender. Duanwu is devastated to find out one of those bodies is his uncle. Then, the commander gathers his group to kill the few Japanese prisoners they had. On the other hand, the deserters don't want to kill them, but the commander shoots one of them and threatens to do the same to the others if they don't follow orders. The soldiers begin shooting the prisoners, yet Duanwu can't bring himself to do it even under threat. And to save him from getting killed, one of his superiors grabs him and reminds him the Japanese killed his uncle, so he gets angry and pulls the trigger. Later that night, Duanwu tries to convince his superiors to let him and his brother go because they're farmers who aren't for the war. Since the colonel rejected his request, he returned to the underground canal to see if he could escape. Then, 2 other deserters find him and join him, but on their way out, they find Japanese troops sneaking in through the same tunnel. The 3 then hide underwater against the wall and wait for the Japanese to pass, but they hold their breath for so long that they lose one of their friends. The civilians see Duanwu and the other deserter rush toward the exit, so they pretend they're not escaping. Instead, they said they wanted to warn everyone about the Japanese army attack. The police then turn their lights at the warehouse while the civilians raise the alarm, waking up the Chinese army. They immediately raise their defenses, earning them a victory with only a few losses. Outside, the civilians praise Duanwu and his companion for being heroes, inspiring 3 young schoolboys to join the troops. But when Duanwu and his companion go back inside, they're still scolded by the colonel, who suspects what they were trying to do when getting into the tunnels. The colonel then punishes them by sending them out to fix their defenses. The following day, civilians begin panicking again when they notice more significant Japanese troops are approaching. Mr. Fong, on the other hand, takes advantage of his intel to take bets on the results of the incoming battle from foreigners. A few hours later, the Japanese attacked, and the warehouse troops were overwhelmed. The deserters, including the brothers and the schoolboys, are given weapons in order to fight. The brutal battle makes both the Japanese and the Chinese troops lose men. However, when Hubei peeks out a window and notices the white horse running by, he can't help telling Kuai Yue about it, causing Kuai Yue to try to look at the horse too. Unfortunately, as soon as his head sticks out, he gets shot by the enemy. While the Chinese army is smaller in numbers, they know their strategy well and use various plans to defend their city. They make holes in the wall to shoot out grenades and use mirrors to follow the enemy's movements. When they have no choice, the soldiers strap explosives to their bodies and charge toward the Japanese to blow up a good amount of their troops. Civilians across the river are moved by these sacrifices and decide to help, so they send a group of volunteers hiding under a Nazi flag to deliver supplies. A Japanese sniper kills a few of them, though, and they lose the phone line. So, another civilian runs across the bridge and rolls the wire over as the Japanese soldiers shoot him down. Now, the warehouse can communicate with the city. When asked how many soldiers are left, the colonel decides he wants to give people hope, so he responds 800 instead of the actual 452. One of the civilians under the flag is Mr. Fong, who begins filming and taking pictures of the soldiers. On the other side, Hubei is grieving the loss of Kuai Yue, so the commander offers him a drink. He then ends up grabbing the whole bottle while watching the city lights. At the same time, a donation collection is happening in the streets, and every civilian is eager to collaborate after seeing the sacrifices in the battle. Not wanting another bridge tragedy, citizens slingshot goods to soldiers through warehouse windows. The casino owner surprises everyone by donating a flag, delivered to the troops by a young girl who crosses the river by swimming. Duanwu sees her and throws a rope through the window to help her get inside. A hidden sniper shoots at him, but the bullet grazes his neck, so Hubei now thinks of him as a hero. Afterward, the colonel informs his troops that the generalissimo wants them to defend the warehouse for 2 more days to gain worldwide attention. However, this could mean they shouldn't raise the donated flag because it'll taunt the enemy, provoking them to fight harder. At the same time, they lack the men to counterattack. A considerable argument begins among the soldiers and arrives at the majority votes for one conclusion: to raise the flag. The following day, the colonel tasks the deserters to raise the flag on the warehouse's roof, which earns them the cheer of the civilians. On the other hand, the Japanese army wastes no time attacking, and their fighter planes specifically target the flag. While the Chinese troops are losing many men by the second, they still hold onto the flag to keep it up, so the Japanese turn to attack the civilians too. Because there are foreigners there, they receive a message saying the other nations might see this as an act of war. The flag eventually falls, and while the Chinese decide to stop attacking to avoid unnecessary sacrifices, they still raise the flag again. Fortunately, the Japanese begin to retreat when they receive objections from the British, so Duanwu celebrates their victory before he realizes he got shot. With his last breath, he asks Mr. Fong to take a picture of him for his brother. Later, while Hubei is again watching the city and grieving another loss, the white horse shows up and allows him to pet at his comfort. That night, the colonel reenacts an old Chinese battle story with a map and puppet to remind his troops of their mission. The following day, the British put a Red Cross flag outside the settlement to mark it as a safe zone. Colonel Isao comes over in a black horse to talk, so Colonel Jinyuan meets him by riding the white horse. It turns out Isao will be replaced by another colonel soon, and he knows the Chinese will receive orders to retreat. So for the sake of their honor and to be seen less as a failure, he requests one last battle. The colonel accepts and rushes back to the warehouse to prepare the troops. Hiding under an English flag, the commissioner orders them to retreat to the settlement at midnight. But the colonel didn't accept it because they thought they might inspire the international community to help if they continued to fight. Sadly, the commissioner already knows nobody is coming for them because after the NRA fell, the rest of the world lost interest in their conflict. The higher-ups have decided it's better to accept the loss. It may not be honorable, but the country has suffered enough. When night falls, they turn off their searchlights so the soldiers can retreat through the bridge, but a small group must stay behind to provide cover. Mr. Fong takes pictures and letters from this group, promising to take them home to their families. While the civilians flood the streets to watch the soldiers cross the bridge, Hubei decides to stay behind as one of the defenders. The Japanese soon turn on their searchlight, firing a flare to light up the area and make it easier for them to attack the soldiers on the bridge. The volunteers leave the warehouse to approach the Japanese camp to slow them down, but they quickly get shot. Civilians also try to help by reaching out with medical supplies or shooting their weapons from their homes' balconies. Little by little, most Chinese troops, including the colonel, are killed, so only a handful of men make it to the settlement, where the civilians reach out to them through the gates. The movie ends in modern-day Shanghai, where the white horse comes out of the warehouse ruins that still stand as a reminder of the soldiers' sacrifices. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.